So, Rob, it is wonderful to speak with you again. I've interviewed you for Yahoo before. That time it was in person, and it was when you were releasing your Christmas record, Celestial. And I know we're here to talk about your awesome autobiography, Confess, which I read in one day. There's lots to talk about. First things first, let's pick up where we left off. Are you going to be on RuPaul's Drag Race? Is it no, don't do this. Come on, is it happening? Just blink once for, take your glasses up, blink once for yes.
Nobody's contacted me. That, when you and I talked about that, Lindsay, it went around the world, it seemed.
It did,
And I was expecting their peoples to be in touch with my peoples, and no peoples got in touch. And somebody asked me the other day, about Ru. I don't know. Maybe if we keep yelling, hello, Ru.
I will make some calls. I know that they actually just started to film it, they're about to. Obviously, with COVID and stuff, things have been delayed. I do know that they're starting to. So yeah, the whole world wants it to happen. I feel it will. I'm going to put it out there in the universe. If it doesn't happen for season 13, might happen for 14. But obviously, you've got a lot of things going on. Like I say, the book Confess is just about to come out, or by the time this runs, it will be out. And I understand that at first you were reluctant to write your life story. I think people have probably been wanting for you, much like I've been wanting you to be on Drag Race for a long time. A lot of people have been wanting you to write your memoirs for ages. So, what made you finally decide to do it?
Yeah, even in my 40s, I was approached by various publishers, and I just kept going back with, 40 ain't so old, as much as looming to 70 ain't so old. But what I meant by that was, I think at this point, those extra almost 30 years have really been able to make me come to a decision, because I'm full of life. I'm full of life more than ever. And so this feels like the right time to do it. And it has been done. I have confessed.
You have. How does it feel to have it all out there now? Was it like a cathartic experience to be just get it out there?
You know what it's like? It's like when you're talking to a friend one-on-one. I've become very close with Ian. When you're talking one-on-one about all of these things that happen in your life, it's relatively easy. Especially, as I've said before, Lindsay, that, when you're clean and sober, you just become a more open, honest, truthful person, and all this stuff comes out your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing to do that, and then it's another thing to have, all the manuscripts sent to you, and you start reading it and you go, oh, God, should I have said that? Should I have said that? And then you compound that thought with doing the audio for the book, where you're actually speaking the words.
Oh,
and then it really starts to hit home. So I've just had to do that. Elsa thing. Let it go. And I'm letting it go, because we're a few days away from release now. Internally, I feel good about it, although there's a little bit of trepidation, because there are some really strong stories in this book, as you know.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Let's get on with it. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely. So, of course, there are many fun moments in the book. There's plenty of sex, drugs, and rock and roll for people who want that. But, something that permeated the book that really stuck with me when I read it, it was, there's a lot of sadness and frustration in the book of, about the fact that you were in the closet for so long, which is something we talked a bit about in the last interview. We talked about, your moment on MTV and how, you were you were definitely over 40 when that happened. You were, so, that really stuck with me. So, one thing that was interesting to me is the band, the Judas Priest, obviously knew all along, but it was something that did you guys discuss it? Or there's a part in the book where management basically said when you got to a certain level of fame that you should just sort of don't ask, don't tell, so to speak.
Yeah, it was very much like that. And I could understand their concern, just because of the times that we were living in. I think there would have been possibly because as we moved on, it turns out that everybody, we knew, we don't care. But at the time, I could understand the concerns, and as much as it frustrated me to be not exactly lectured, but kind of being told to stay in this particular place. And in my mind, I was staying in this place, you know. I don't think I was doing anything overtly to attract attention. But that's how it was for me, you know. That's how it was for me. And, you know, you talk about coming out. I just read a story on the BBC just recently about a chap in the UK who turned 90 and then he just told everybody, I've got to tell you I'm gay. What a great relief that must have been for that man in his in the latter stages of his life to go to his grave peacefully, because it's all about peace, as we've talked many, many times. Finding your sexuality and appreciating it and loving yourself, and saying, hey, this is me, born this way, whatever. So it's my life, I'll live it the way I choose. All those simple but very powerful components. But yeah, that was a particularly difficult thing to kind of be confronted with. It was almost like an intervention. And so there it went. And I know that at the heart of the matter, everybody felt it was at the time the right thing to do.
Do you think it was 1998 when you came out? I know in the book you say that if Judas Priest were starting now and you were a 21-year-old man, you would have been out from day one. Do you think that if you had been out from day one or had come out in the 80s, let's say, that it would have, in retrospect, do you think it would have hurt the band?
I can only reflect as a gay man at that time, seeing what was going on around us. I'll just take one prime example, the horrible AIDS epidemic that was hitting so many of our beautiful friends, gay and straight. But you know, when you take something like that is just so potent, and you mix it in with other things, and the confusion and the spinning and the pushback starts. I'm not going to his show, I might catch AIDS. That kind of stupidity, you know? So, yeah, I mean, the world was, as much as we look upon the 80s as like the big change to some extent, it wasn't. There were still tremendous barriers put up for people like myself.
Well, you do say you weren't trying to attract attention overtly necessarily, but, you know, I guess I didn't pay as much attention to the lyrics then as I did. But when I was reading about some of the songs in Confess, I'm like, oh, you know, like Raw Deal, Beyond the Realms of Death, Jaw, figure that one out. Eat Me Alive, Turbo Lover. Okay, there was a pattern there. I'm curious, since these songs had some gay subtext to them, let's say, were you trying to test the waters and see what would happen if maybe you dropped these hints?
The only one that was kind of an overt statement in all of those lyrics to me personally was Raw Deal, where I talk about going to Fire Island in New York, and a couple of cults played rough stuff, New York, Fire Island, you know, and then that end phrase of the song where I'm singing, love knoweth no laws. There you go.
There you go.
And when I wrote those words, and I presented them to the guys, there wasn't even a flinch. They were like, oh, these are great words. Yeah, these words will do. These words will work great with this song. I was never questioned. And in all my years with Priest, I've never been questioned about my lyrics. There's been great acceptance. We always talk about every set of lyrics we do in Priest, every time. You know, that's just because we're immersed in each other's work. I comment on the drums, and Scott comments on this, and Glenn comments on that, and son Richie, and so on and so forth. Ian, everybody piles in. But that was the only one that really sent out. Why is he singing about Fire Island in New York? That's like a gay haven for men. The jawbreaker thing was always kind of like, I was going to say tongue in cheek, which would make it even worse. But
Sorry.
It was only after I'd finished writing those lyrics deadly as a viper, you know, and spitting things and stuff. And I thought, oh, this could be a big, you know, but that was afterwards. That was way afterwards, way afterwards. Beyond the Arms of Death is more about kind of that part of you in life where you simply have had enough. You know, you simply can't take the frustration anymore. I'm not sure as that was, maybe Freudianly it was, but I just perceived this about a character who says, you know, this is my life, I'll decide, not you. There are some little things in there when you think about it, but out of all of those songs, most definitely Raw Deal was the one that was really pushing it forward.
And you did say, I believe in the book, that you had mixed feelings when no one did, like your band members or your fans, whatever, no one did pick up on it and put two and two together. There was part of you that was relieved that you'd gone away with it. And there was a part of you that was like disappointed in a way, which I guess is why I was asking the question of if you were trying to see if you could accidentally be found out by putting these messages, these coded things in songs.
Yeah, I suppose if I sat down on a psychiatrist's couch, they would, they would suggest that. But this is the beauty of lyrics, isn't it? This is the beauty of words. Songs always carry lyrics that project a message. And those were my messages, you know. And it's, no, there was, I don't, yeah, I don't know if I actually was like waving a red flag and going, hello, I'm gay, you know, and that because you don't understand that, I'm feeling a little bit, but it was such a mixed up time for me as a musician, internally, still dealing with identity and trying to make sense of it in my work.
Well, you weren't waving the rainbow flag necessarily, but I was interested to find out that on stage you were doing the bandana thing. I found out about what all the bandanas mean from the movie Cruising. Do you remember?
That was blatant.
Yeah, that's super blatant. I assume have you seen the movie Cruising, the Al Pacino movie?
What a great movie.
Love that movie. But the scene where Al Pacino goes to the shop and says, what do all these handkerchiefs mean? And he gets like the sales. So like, that's how I know about that. But obviously that was very well known in the gay community, what certain colors meant. So yeah, that was, you really, you were taking some risks.
We talked again, Lindsay, about this image that I portrayed at that particular time in all the leather and the whips and chains and the studs and the handcuffs and so on and so forth. And the connection to our leather community in the gay world. And I've said, and I will say it over and over again, that was never my intent. That whole image was married to the sound and the power and the heaviness of the music. It just so happened that it kind of meshed into that other side of myself in terms of sexuality. But I do recall that particular tour, and I'd suddenly, you know, with my Bob Dameron guide, and figured out all these little codes, and, you know, red means this and blue means that and black means that. And I just thought, oh, I'll stick them on my shin guards, my leather studded shin guards, you know. It was more of a fashion statement. Accessories, everyone should learn to accessorize. I was just accessorizing, but I knew what I was doing.
Did it ever work? Did people in the audience?
No, good God, no. It never worked anytime, ever. Which is why I had to resort to some of those really dangerous and poignant escapades that we talk about in the book.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask you about the one that you call, I was really surprised to read about what you call your George Michael moment, which, you know, had, you know, luckily for you, it wasn't your George Michael moment because it did not explode in the press. But can you tell me a little bit about, you know, that scare?
Yeah, well, this thing that we call cottaging in the UK is called cruising over here. And some gay men choose to do this thing where you go to a bathroom and you try and have a little bit of fun with another guy that's there for the same reason as you. And I think the incident we're talking about happened to me on Venice Beach. And I was living in Marina del Rey at the time. And for my daily exercise, I get on my bicycle and go all the way up to Malibu and back with the stop. the bathrooms. You've got to laugh, because if you don't laugh, whatever.
Yeah.
So I stopped and I go in there, and I'm, it's quite busy. I'm sitting there on the loo, as we call it. And this really hot guy comes in. He's across from me, and he's washing his hands and there's like a mirror. It's like a steel mirror. And he's looking at me and kind of nodding and winking. And I'm, hello. I'm over here in this business. And then he turns around and he looks at me, and I look at him, and he kind of, acknowledges me, and I acknowledge him. And then the next minute he pulls out his badge and says, "You're under arrest for indecent behavior," whatever. And wow, so many things go through your mind when something like that happens. They took me and put me in a little room that was behind the bathrooms at Venice Beach, and there was already like 5 or 6 guys in there, and we all sat there for a couple of 3 hours, chained to the bench. And then they took us in a van to some police station. I still don't know where it was. It was miles away. We seemed to drive forever. Got to the police station, and I was still chained to the bench. We were all chained to the bench. And then I see these feet walk past me, and this guy pulls my baseball cap off, and he goes, "Rob." I go, "Yes." He goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, done something really dumb and stupid. Come with me. So internally I'm thinking, oh great, I'm free. No, they put me in a cell by myself, and then for the next hour, every cop in the police department came by the little glass window and went, "Yeah, Priest." I didn't get off with it. I paid a fine, which I should have. I was put on probation, which I should have. I pled guilty, which I should have. And the police were really, really cool, because you get the TMZ at the time calling all the police departments like, "Have you got any stuff?" And they very, 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 very courteously kept that out of the press. But it's something I have to talk about, simply because, like I just said, Lindsay, it's poignant. It's kind of sad that I had to go to such extreme, dangerous measures to get some kind of intimate physical contact.
Absolutely. What year did that happen? Was it before or after was it before or after what happened with George Michael?
I don't know. We'll have to Google it.
Okay.
But I referenced that. Yeah, I referenced that.
You never spoke to George Michael about it, did you, or anything?
No, I never did. I never did. No.
I was just curious. I guess the lesson we learned is that, among other things, that cops are bigger fans of Judas Priest than of Wham, because George Michael, they didn't give George that luxury of staying out of the press and having that incident be private. So, obviously it could have, been much worse for you. But yeah, to talk about the frustration, it's kind of ironic, when a band gets really big, particularly a rock band, they get groupies, and, all of a sudden they have like all the sex they want, like handed to them on a silver platter. They got fans, and it's like the opposite happened with you. Like the more famous you got, like the less you could act on those impulses.
Pleasuring yourself only goes so far, doesn't it? I mean, we're humans. Human beings are designed to love each other in a physical, intimate way, which means physically being with each other. And I couldn't do that. I wasn't able to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, where everybody else was sowing their oats, if that's the correct expression to use, I was back in the hotel room with my cup of cocoa watching David Letterman or whoever.
I'm curious, because another recurring thing that happens in discussing your personal life in the book is you had some long-term relationships with men, but a lot of times they either were, well, they weren't totally gay. They were straight, probably at the end of the day, maybe bisexual, but they liked women, and now obviously you're in a happy relationship. But you had a pretty interesting theory about why you kept getting into these doomed relationship situations with men who were never going to be able to 100% all in a relationship. But I thought it was pretty interesting if you could talk about why that was a pattern for you, a pattern you eventually did break, but a pattern for a long time.
Yeah, I think again it was me trying to protect myself by having relationships with with another man that was, from my perspective, in essentially the same place that I was, because these were literally straight men, and they were having an affair with another man, and they too were in some kind of closet, you know, and I don't think it's an unusual thing, because I have a lot of gay friends, and for whatever reason we are attracted to straight men. I can't explain it. There's got to be some reason. I mean, we're all content and happy and good with ourselves as it is, but you know, again, sexual attraction has no real boundaries. We're just drawn to someone for this reason or for that reason. But I think in my instances with straight men, they always seem to happen at a show. It was always at a show. The only one time that I talk about in the book, my first ever kind of relationship was with a gay guy I met in a gay bar. But the other relationships primarily were with essentially a fan or someone that I met in some, you know, connection to the metal world. Yeah, that's just part of me in the dysfunctional sense that I think has just been left over from those incidents that happened to me as a teenager. Because these things live with you forever when you go through those types of abuse. They're always in your mindset, you know. So it's complicated. It's so complicated. That's why we need another Dr. Ruth. Remember Dr. Ruth? Is she still out there, Dr. Ruth?
I think she is. I think
She's amazing. She's amazing.
You should do an advice show. Have you ever thought about
you think?
doing that?
Yeah. No.
What advice would you have for people who want to come out, particularly older people who are coming out relatively later in life, the 30s, 40s, 90s, whatever, you know, like it's an interesting, you know, I think now, of course, young people feel like they can be out in high school, but you know, it was a different time. What advice would you have for someone who's maybe in their 40s right now and finally thinking of doing that?
I can only share my experiences, and they were tough, they were difficult, they were harmful psychologically and physically. And I can only say that once you've burst out of the closet and made peace with yourself, two things happen. You do make peace for yourself, and then you find out who the people that really love you are, because unconditional love is just that. It's acceptance. And even now, as you point out, it's a whole different world to when I was growing up, when you know, gay men were being thrown in jail in England and, you know, left there for years. It is a lot easier to some extent for younger people, but they still have their challenges and their difficulties to come to terms with their identity. It's a big thing, you know, because you're born and raised in predominantly a straight world, a straight environment. We're a minority as much as there are other minorities in the world, and most minorities get kicked around like a football. It's absurd. I've never understood that humanity can be that way, but we are. It never seems to end. If you're a minority, you're going to get kicked around like a football. So you have to fight for your rights, for equality. So it's all that. That's the kind of message I try and send out to anyone that's waiting for the moment to step forward and just say, hey, this is who I am.
You've described yourself as the heavy metal Quentin Chris, which I think is pretty cool, because I know that he made an impression on you at a very young age, and then you eventually, late in his life, got to meet him. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah. There was a wonderful program I saw on British television called The Naked Civil Servant, which is about Quentin Crisp. He was such a fearless, strong gay man in his time. He dressed and looked the way he wanted to. We would walk down the street dressed and looked the way he wanted to, and people would sneer at him and spit at him and beat him up and everything, but he never stopped being who he was. So his life got made into a BBC drama, Naked Civil Servant, with the late great John Hurt playing,
such amazing actor,
playing Quentin. So years ahead, I'm at the Gay Pride in San Diego, walking around the events, and there's all these things going on, and there's like this little marquee, and there's a guy sitting there, a really little tiny guy with a big hat and some makeup and grey locks and, you know, beautiful velvet coat and everything. And I go, oh my God, that's Quentin Crisp. Am I losing my mind? That is Quentin Crisp. He's by himself with his books. And I go in and I go, hey, Quentin. He goes, hello, how are you? He had a great voice. Hello, how are you? So I'm not going to bore you with my story because you've probably heard it a million times, but, you know, I'm your biggest fan and I'd love to get your book. Oh, yes, darling, here it is. It's like $10 or something. So I bought the book and he signed it for me to Quentin, to Rob with love from Quentin, which I treasure. So he was one of the great gay icons in our world that we look at and just give praise to.
So surely you must have experiences now where you have fans that feel that way about you. You were on Rolling Stone's list of like great LGBTQ plus heroes a few years ago, about 2 years ago. And do you have any stories about fans that have come up to you and, you know, and you've been on the receiving end of that sort of comment?
I get DMs on my Instagram. I get messages through other social media sources. I meet fans at shows. You know, big butch guys give me a hug and they go, thank you for helping me get out, you know. So it's you never expect or go on a mission for this type of experience, but it happens, you know. And that's a beautiful feeling. That really is a beautiful feeling, that your music and how you just let the world see you as you are can have a ripple effect and go into other people's lives.
Absolutely. And I think once these fans and people have read the book, it's going to be even more of the case. There's lots of story in the book. We've touched on some, but, you know, like I said, there's fun stuff, but there's heavy stuff. And you mentioned at the top of this interview how these stories were easier to tell because of your sobriety. And you've been sober for what, like 34 years now? A long time.
Yeah, January 6th, 1986. So whatever the math is for that. Yeah.
And, you know, you've been through some stuff that would drive anyone to relapse or to drink or to take drugs. What has been your secret when you've been going through various dark times or traumatic times that you've stayed on the sober path?
Well, it's the tools that you're given in rehab. There's a great thing called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Hungry, angry. If ever I feel that way, that can be like a little chink in the armor of keeping sober. So that's easy to kind of relate to instantly. And I have to come back to this spiritual faith that that has been a foundation for me ever since my sobriety. That has to work hand in hand. You know, we talk about a higher power of your choosing. You know, it can be an old guy in a white throne in a cloud. It can be a rock. It can be a tree. It can be anything. It's a focus. It's a way to focus your inner soul and spirit and making a connection and finding peace and balance. And my peace and balance comes from my my great unshakable faith in the spiritual sense. And there's a great story in the book, as you know, about Pearl in that nightclub in New York, which shook me to the core as far as where we go after this part of living.
Is that the psychic? Is that the psychic story?
Yeah.
Can you mind? Do you mind sharing? Do you mind telling the version of it for?
Yeah, just quickly, because I don't want to give all the book away.
I know there's lots. Everybody get it.
No,
dude. I read it in a day.
I know, but in this instance, I lost this partner of mine in a terrible, tragic way, and I met this psychic at this club, and she'd never met me before in my life. She knew nothing of this incident, and as a kind of, you know, people that are in love, they give each other tokens. Sometimes it's a ring, sometimes it's, I don't know, a poem or whatever. In this instance, it might sound freaky, but whatever. He gave me a pair of his underwear, kind of fancy underwear with clips on the side. So I'm sitting with Pearl. So I'd never met this lady before in my life. Beautiful, big Jamaican lady, very, outgoing and great laugh. And we're sitting there and she goes, "You've lost somebody recently." And I went, "Yes." And she goes, "He wants to know if you've still got the underwear that he gave you." What? I go, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, some fancy underwear with the clasps or something on them." I'm like, "Oh my God." There you go. How could anybody besides myself and my partner, who I'd lost, known about that private exchange of a token? So that really shook me to the core, like, one or two other incidents in the book. So from that moment on, that was clear to me. And then he always used to do practical jokes with water, like water balloons or little water pistol guns. And he's saying, "Do you miss the fun and games they used to have with water?" I mean, look, how on earth can you know this stuff? So that really gave me a closer and stronger belief to my spiritual faith and what goes on into the next place that we go to.
That's amazing. I know that we are running out of time. So obviously this book is great. I read it in a day. I encourage everybody watching this to read the book. Biopics are big now, Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man, two other, great gay icons of rock. There's a Bowie one coming out. Madonna's working on one. Is this going to get made into a movie? And who's going to play you? Because I'd watch that movie. I'd go see you at the Oscars. I want Judas Priest on the Oscars. You've been on American Idol. You might as well perform on the Oscars someday. But really, I feel it would be a really good movie. Do you think that could happen?
I think something like that is out of your control. It's going to come in from another place. It's going to come in from Hollywood primarily. Could come from the UK. I don't know. And the big thing is, who's going to be me? Who's going to be the younger me? I mean, I know they can do CGI and stuff now. I thought Remy was phenomenal as Freddie.
But
oh my
Taron
God,
Egerton was great as Elton as well.
And
well.
then,
We've got Timothy Chalamet play you, or
who's
Harry.
that?
Timothy Chalamet from
Ooh,
Me. There you go.
Yes, absolutely. He is phenomenal. He's phenomenal. And the great thing about a lot of these actors is that when you hear that this actor is going to portray somebody else, you go, "Oh, that ain't going to work." Knock it out the ballpark.
All right.
So we'll have
happen.
to see. Maybe the Yahoos can go, "I think blah blah should play Rob at 15 and blah blah at 50."
All right. Well, I got two things on my to-do list that I got to make happen, because I'm all about trying to make things happen for you. We're going to get this made into a movie starring Timothy Chalamet, and we're going to get you on RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm on a mission. Both going to happen. I feel it. I got a spiritual vibe as well, but
there you go.
It's always
do what happen. You feel. Do what you feel. Can I trademark that? That's a T-shirt.
That's a T-shirt.
Or the next song by Lady Gaga. Do what you feel. Yeah.
That's another thing I want to see happen. I know the two of you have been trying to work on some kind of collaboration for a while, and I feel that would be amazing as well. So let's put that out into the universe while we're at it.
Yeah, life is full of dreams, and we should all rush after them and make them come true if we can. Awesome. It's been a great chat. I love you guys.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's always a pleasure. Be safe out there. And thank you for the great quarantine read. Everybody read this book. It's amazing.